Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stuart Hilts, who's the Director of the Centre for Land and Water Stewardship at the University of Guelph. He served both as Chair of the Department of Land Resource Science and as Acting Associate Dean in the Faculty of Environmental Sciences at the University. For many years, he conducted research and developed demonstrations of private stewardship programs for rural landowners, spearheading the development of landowner contact programs in Canada and contributing to the development of community-based land trusts. He currently serves as chair of the Ontario Farmland Trust. Stu Hilts founded the immensely successful A.D. Laternal Conservation Symposium, the largest annual conservation gathering in Ontario. He also chaired the first National Conference on Conservation and Stewardship in Canada in 2000. He's worked extensively with non-government conservation groups in Ontario and was the founding chair of the Ontario Land Trust Alliance. In recognition of his efforts, Dr. Hilts has been given 3 different Distinguished Professor Awards related to his teaching, research, and outreach work. He has numerous publications in the area, and it's a real pleasure for me to give you Stu Hilts, who's going to leave us with some inspirational words about continuing with this work into the future. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, Anne, and thank all of you. I told Anne she didn't need to read all of that, but at any rate, it is a joy to be here and quite an honor, as well as a challenge, of course, to try and say a few final words about what I've heard. I doubt if I can inspire you more than the speakers we've heard over the past 3 days. You will all have your favorite presentation or moment or person that you can relate to when you go home, and I don't expect it'll be me, but I do hope that you all go home with, you know, the usual inspiration that all of us have got from these conferences in the past. But I was asked to try and give a few final comments, and I've certainly found it as inspiring as you have, so I'm going to try and do that. And given that we're a little early, that means I can revert to my usual 50-minute lecture slot. And a little bit about my background so you know where I'm coming from. I talked to my first landowner about stewardship things in 1975 and began running landowner contact programs shortly after that. My work has always focused on that private landowner in the southern Ontario context. Typically, those landowners own perhaps a woodlot or a farm with a woodlot, often stream or pond, and often interested in nature conservation. So I tend to have worked in all of those sectors at that landowner level: agriculture, water, forestry, nature conservation, because at the landowner level it all comes together in the silos of our university departments, where the silos all start, or the government agencies where the carefully trained silo experts work, really don't matter. After 30 years of trying to do this, it's wonderful to be here and see so many people who have joined the stewardship bus, the analogy we're using here, and I hope you will all continue that wonderful work. I've been both surprised and pleased with a couple of things. One of is the scope of the discussion. I tend to like those case studies about what people are doing out on the ground, but here we have broadened the idea of stewardship to have a lot of discussion at a much broader level about stewardship as a set of tools to achieve sustainability in a very broad sense in Canada. And I like that definition that someone else cited, that Preston reported from a school student, Canada as a partnership of people and the land. I think that's pretty central. I also was reminded of the reference to McLuhan by the Premier when he spoke, there are no passengers on Spaceship Earth, only crew. And we're all members of that crew. It's that sense of responsibility that stewardship programs foster that I think is central. So it's up to all of us to take that responsibility for how we live. I think we're all here for two things, and now maybe three, because one of the nicest things is that I'm not wrapping up the end of the conference so much as helping kick off the beginning of a continued dialogue. So being part of that continued dialogue is one of those things I hope you're here for. But many of us came to learn those on-the-ground things. Yesterday I sat through stories about Operation Burrowing Owl and the Lake Simcoe Stewardship Project and the North American Waterfall Management Project and the Manitoba Tallgrass Prairie Project and so on. And those are the concrete examples that I can take back and make use of in many ways. So I don't want to skip over those. Those are very important and an important reason for coming. I am promised that the papers that were presented in all the concurrent sessions yesterday will be up on the web shortly. I'm trusting that'll happen. I'm trusting the speakers to hand in their presentation and make sure that happens, so you will be able to look at the ideas from sessions you couldn't get to. And we've had mentioned the Stewardship Canada portal, which is another place that you can continue to interact with each other and gain information, so I encourage you to do that. And I don't know where Owen has slipped out to, but I think I could, I was going to ask Owen for that blog that he promised. I think I can thank Owen now for promising that blog as part of that stewardship portal. The bigger picture, though, is what we're here to talk about this afternoon and the 6 recommendations that we have been talking about. I take the results of the discussion period this afternoon as indication that all of you support having a group move ahead with these. The most critical things that have been said to me are that we now have people assigned to do that, and we have deadlines. So I wasn't totally on board with 6 recommendations, but now that I see we have people assigned to actually do something with them and given them a deadline, I think I'm very much on board. I'm one who wouldn't worry much about a definition, but I'm very happy to have those of you who want to have that discussion to carry on. I would plead for one thing that I've heard over the 3 days, and that is to make sure that the definition is broad enough to capture the various things that we're working on, not just biodiversity, but agriculture and forestry and water and even climate change. As Reg said in one of the initial comments, we don't want to cut out some of the work we're doing by a narrow definition. The next 2 recommendations that people have pretty well agreed with, I would agree with. Measurable targets. I have always said that what matters about stewardship is what happens on the ground. If we're not actually protecting rare species or actually improving habitats on the ground, then we're failing. The economic analysis is obviously important. The sooner we get to paying for ecological goods and services, the better, in my opinion, but we've got to do some development of measurable accounts in order to get there. And Preston's suggestion of national environmental accounts is a good way to start.